When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
You there, yeah, you, driving your car, do you need to adjust to a future that is way friendlier to bikes in Montreal? Joining me on the line is Magali Bebronne. She is program manager at Vélo Québec. Hi, Magali, how you doing?
Hello, I'm doing fine, thanks.
It's great to have you on the program, and the reason you're on is that the outgoing CEO, Suzanne Leroux, by the way, 35 years at Vélo Québec, and she is leaving Vélo Québec after a pretty successful career with your group. She was recently quoted in La Presse saying, hey, we're not going back here. There's no U-turn on the progress that bicycles have made on the city. It's full forward. And I'd love to know your thoughts on what your outgoing boss had to say about that.
Well, basically what she's been saying is something that's pretty obvious, is that the reason we're stuck in traffic, the reason we have a hard time finding parking when we're driving around is not because of bikes. It's not because of bike lanes, but it's simply because of the fact that we're doing all the opposite of what we should be doing, and we're actually buying more cars. We just had an article recently stating that another 50,000 cars have been put on the road in 2020 compared to 2019. And so no matter how much we say that we should be using our cars less, that we should probably also be going towards smaller car, we're doing all the opposite. And so she was just reminding us collectively that actually people on bikes and making a little bit of room for bikes is actually going to create more room on the roads for people who actually need to drive around. So it's all about offering people options not to drive their cars so that people who actually need to drive their cars can do it in a more comfortable way.
And Magali, I just got to say, I'm in complete agreement with that assessment. I do find it odd sometimes when I hear people who are upset, oh, we can't get parking anymore downtown. There's no more spots. And I say to myself, what do you expect's going to happen if you're adding 50,000 cars a year to Quebec roads? You can't make more roads, right? You know, you look at downtown, it's not like you can create a new road in between Sherbrooke and de Maisonneuve or de Maisonneuve and St. Catherine or St. Catherine and Rennes-Lévesque. There's no more new roads that can be made there. So you got to think another way. So I'm in complete agreement with you there. We can't just add 50,000 more cars a year to our roads and expect for there to be more room or for there to be less traffic. I guess the question I have for you is, how do you convince people that you're right on this issue? Because so many people think the issue is as simple as creating more parking spots.
Well, that's the problem, is no matter how much data we have, and no matter how we say that we're in favor of active mobility and sustainable mobility, the minute it impacts our daily life, the minute it requires a little bit of adjustment from us, we're against it. So, there's a wide support in theory for more bike lanes, more bike infrastructure. But then when it does come to our street and we realize that we might have to park on a cross street and walk a few minutes, then we don't quite agree anymore. And there's always this double standard where we're like, well, why don't cyclists go on the next street so that I can keep parking in front of my spot? So, I don't want to make it a driver versus cyclist issue, because I think we're all of these things at the same time or at different times in our day. And people who drive may actually cycle. We have to remind ourselves that over half of the Quebec population actually cycles too. But a lot of people do not feel comfortable doing so when they have to share the road with bikes. So the only way we're going to take people off of their cars or out of their cars is actually offering more options. One thing that we also need to remind ourselves is that there's so many empty seats in cars. Cars are created mostly with 5 seats in them, yet the average number of passengers per car is 1.2. So there are a lot of cars driving around, and this is just the least efficient way to move people around. A bus lane or a cycle lane will be moving people a lot more efficiently than cars have to. So I understand the frustration of people who have to deal at the same time with constructions and new bike lanes and their life habits being being really, challenged with all this pandemic and everything. But we have to maybe take a step back and not confuse everything together.
Yeah, we're with Magali Bebronne, program manager at Vélo Québec. Magali, that number, by the way, the 1.2 average number of passengers in a car is such a brutal number. It makes such a convincing case. But I got to ask you this. Do you ever wish, let's say on the municipal level for Projet Montreal, at times do you say, hey guys, don't go too fast, because if you turn off too many people and then you get voted out because of it, it will do yourself a disservice. Do you ever sort of say, ooh, maybe we're going too fast? Because as you mentioned, you may have all these stats behind you, but people are against it, right? So do you ever look at the situation and say, okay, guys, let's keep with the progress, but let's make sure it's at a slow pace that people can get behind?
No, I don't think that, because actually we're going too slow, and the bike infrastructure in Montreal has not been able to keep up with the pace of popularity of cycling. So we actually now have traffic jams on our cycle lanes, and we must keep in mind that we still have a downtown Montreal which is essentially empty of bike lanes, apart from the Maisonneuve. There's almost no separate bike lane for you to bike around in what is the most
René Lévesque, I walk by it every day. René Lévesque's got a great big bike path.
René Lévesque only past Berry, but if you want to be going south of the Maisonneuve in really what's Square Victoria, all these areas basically have almost no bike infrastructure. And what we do see is that when the bike infrastructure is there, people use it almost immediately. And on the contrary, we might be looking to cities such as Calgary. I know it's weird to say that, but what Calgary did when they decided that they were going to implement bike lanes is they did a whole network all at once. Because one single bike lane or just, bike lane here and there will not get people on their bikes, because your bike trip is just as good as the weakest link that you need to take on this bike trip. So if there's one place, one underpass maybe that you don't feel comfortable riding in, then you're going to give up cycling altogether. So, it's all the opposite. As soon as we have these infrastructure, we see how fast they're going, and there's actually data for that as well. Even with the temporary bike lanes that the city has put in, they were smart enough to put some counters on there to actually measure the popularity of cycling, and the numbers speak for themselves. Improving the quality of bike infrastructure, for example, on the Christophe Colomb bike axis has increased numbers by 30%.
And those cyclists, they're fighting back, right? They don't want that corridor, that active corridor, to be removed on Christophe Colomb.
Of course, when you've experienced how comfortable this bike path is, where it's actually wide enough that you're not stuck behind the slowest cyclist, and you can actually overtake safely and comfortably, and everybody can go at their own pace. And it's also direct. We have a number of direct roads for people to be driving, but we have very little of those efficient links for people to be doing greater distances in a more effective way. And I think the Saint-Denis bike path that is, in the middle of a whole lot of controversy is going to be a game changer and an eye-opener for a lot of people who are going to realize that riding 5 or even 7 kilometers, if it's done in an efficient, direct way, can actually be their best option to move around.
Magali, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You're welcome here anytime.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's Magali Bebronne, program manager at Vélo Québec. And boy, am I getting your text messages, by the way. But guys, hear me out here. You cannot, the room doesn't exist. You can't add 50,000 cars every year and then expect for there to be a parking spot for you everywhere you go. It just doesn't make sense. There needs to be an alternative. So hear Magali out, by the way, because I think she's got some good points.